How do you break a city that refuses to fall? Not with a bigger army, but with an idea so utterly insane it just might work. For 10 grueling, sun-scorched, blood-soaked years, the greatest army the Greek world had ever seen has been beached outside the walls of Troy. They're fighting for honor, for glory, and for a queen, Helen, who was whisked away by the Trojan prince Paris, sparking this whole divine soap opera. But after a decade, the glory is fading, and all that's left is the grit, the grief, and the gnawing feeling that this was all a terrible mistake. You have to imagine the scene. The Greek camp is less of a military staging ground and more of a sprawling, depressing town. The ships that carried them here with such high hopes are now rotting on the shore. The tents are patched, the armor is dented, and the men are weary down to their very souls. The A-list heroes are mostly gone. Achilles, their unstoppable killing machine, was taken down by an arrow to his only weak spot at mainstream. Fact we all know, his famous heel. The mighty Ajax, driven mad by grief and politics, has also met a tragic end. The men still standing are the survivors, the grinders, and they are just about done. The air itself hums with a low frequency of despair and a constant, infuriating sight of those impenetrable Trojan walls. They just stand there, day after day, silently mocking them. Into this pit of gloom steps our man, Odysseus, king of Ith. He's not the strongest or the most handsome of the Greek kings, but his mind is a weapon sharper than any sword. While everyone else is thinking about how to knock the walls down, he's thinking about how to get invited inside. He's seen a decade of brutal, head-on assaults fail. He knows that more of the same will only create more widows back home. So, he concocts a plan born of pure, unadulterated cunning, whispered to him. Some say, by the goddess Athena herself. Here is an obscure little tidbit for you. While Odysseus gets all the credit for the idea, the actual construction of the horse was credited to a master craftsman named E. Some sources say Epeius was a formidable boxer but a pretty timid soldier, so maybe building this thing was his way of contributing to the war effort without having to be on the front lines. A classic case of work smart, not hard. Scholars still debate, of course, whether the Trojan horse was a literal giant wooden animal or a metaphor for a sophisticated siege engine, or perhaps even an earthquake sent by Poseidon, who is also the god of horses. But in the story, the plan is literal, and it is bonkers. Odysseus pitches it to the other kings. We pretend to give up. We sail away, leaving behind a massive, hollow wooden horse as a supposed offering to the gods for a safe journey home. Inside that horse, the best of our remaining warriors. The rest of the army will just hide behind a nearby island, wait for our signal, and come back to a city with its gates wide open. Imagine the silence in the command tent after he says that. They're meant to trust their lives to a piece of abstract art. It's a gamble of epic proportions, but after 10 years of failure, it's the only play they have left. What would you do? Keep fighting a losing battle or trust the crazy guy with the wooden pony idea? The next morning, something is wrong. Or rather, something is quiet. For the first time in 10 years, the Trojan guards peering over the battlements at sunrise are ungreeted by the sight of 1,000,000 men, Greek army and the smell of their breakfast fires. There's just nothing. An eerie silence hangs over the beach, broken only by the lapping waves. Remember that depressing, sprawling camp of despair we talked about? It's gone, vanished. It's the ancient world equivalent of being ghosted after a very, very long and toxic relationship. Cautiously, then with a surge of disbelief and dawning joy, the Trojans throw open the gates they've hidden behind for a decade. They flood onto the sand, a whole city breathing fresh, sea salt air for the first time in ages. They walk through the abandoned Greek huts, kicking at the remnants of their hated enemy. The relief is a physical thing, a weightlifting from the city's collective shoulders. The war is over. They won. They simply outlasted them. And then they see it. Standing alone on the shore, silhouetted against the morning sun, is the horse. It's colossal, an absolute monster of woodworking, easily as tall as their city walls. It's carved from fir wood, gleaming in the light, and it is so masterfully built that it looks less like a statue and more like a creature holding its breath. Instantly, the joyous crowd turns into a debating society. What in the name of the gods is this thing? A trophy? A surrender token? A trap? It's the worst housewarming gift ever, because nobody knows what to do with it. One faction immediately shouts to drag it into the city and dedicate it to the goddess Athena, the city's protector. The argument is that the Greeks left it as a holy offering to secure a safe passage home. They made it this massive on purpose, the theory goes, so that the Trojans couldn't fit it through their gates. Because, if the Trojans were to destroy this sacred offering, they would bring Athena's wrath down upon themselves. But if they could get it inside their walls, that divine favor would be transferred to Troy. It's a pretty slick piece of divine PR. But another, more cautious group isn't buying it. Are you all insane? They argue. After 10 years of slaughter, you think the Greeks just packed up and left us a present? Burn it, push it into the sea, cut it open and see what's inside. Never trust a Greek, especially when they're bearing gifts. Here, as a little tidbit. Some versions of the myth say, the horse was built from the wood of sacred cornel trees from Mount Ida, a place holy to the Trojans. This would have made the idea of destroying it feel even more sacrilegious, a trap within a trap. Scholars still debate whether the Trojans were truly this gullible, or if a decade of brutal, grinding warfare had simply worn down their collective judgment, making them desperate to believe in a miracle. The city stands divided, a shouting match on the beach, with the fate of their entire civilization resting on what to do with this silent, wooden beast. What would your vote be? Just as the argument on the beach reaches a fever pitch, a figure of authority strides through the crowd. It's Laocoon, a priest of Poseidon, and he is not having any of this divine gift nonsense. He's radiating pure, unadulterated I told you so energy before anything has even happened. He looks at the horse, then at the gullible faces in the crowd, and he basically tells them all to get a grip. Have you lost your minds? He bellows, his voice echoing across the shore. Do you really think our enemies are gone? Do you think any gift from the Greeks comes without a price, without a trick? He then delivers one of the most famous lines in all of mythology, a phrase that has echoed through the centuries. I fear the Greeks, even when they bear gifts. To prove his point, he doesn't just argue, he acts, with all his strength. He hurls a massive spear into the flank of the wooden horse. It sticks, quivering, and a deep, hollow thud reverberates from within. It's a strange, unsettling sound, like a groan from a giant beast. For a heart-stopping moment, there's silence. The sound is wrong. It should have been the solid thwack of wood, but this was cavernous, ominous. Odysseus and the men packed inside must have been sweating bullets, trying not to so much as breathe while the Trojan spearhead was likely just inches from their faces. You have to wonder if they drew lots for who got the spot right by the wall. But just as Laocoon's warning seems to be sinking in, the gods decide to intervene, and not in a subtle way. From the calm sea, two enormous sea serpents suddenly emerge, their coils slicing through the water, their heads held high and their eyes blazing red. The crowd screams and scrambles back. The snakes make a beeline not for the horse, but for Laocoon and his 2 young sons who are with him. In a truly horrific scene, the serpents coil around the boys, and then around Laocoon himself as he tries to fight them off. The priest who just warned of a hidden danger is silenced in the most brutal way imaginable, crushed to death right there on the sand. Here's the tragic twist. How do the Trojans interpret this? They see it as divine punishment. They think Laocoon was struck down by the gods, specifically Athena, for daring to profane her sacred gift with his spear. The single most important warning they receive is immediately twisted into proof that they should do the exact opposite. Any doubt vanishes, replaced by superstitious fear, as if that weren't enough. Another warning comes. Remember the city's resident prophetess Cassandra? She's King Priam's daughter, cursed by the god Apollo so that she would always prophesy the truth, but no one would ever believe her. She comes running from the citadel, hair wild, eyes wide with terror, screaming about armed men inside the horse, about fire and death in the end of their city. Here's a Lysander tidbit. Some accounts claim she didn't just give a vague warning, she actually clung to the horse, trying to set it on fire herself. Scholars still debate the psychological origins of Cassandra's curse. Was it a literal divine punishment from Apollo, or a metaphor for the tragic fate of a woman whose intelligence was dismissed as hysteria in a patriarchal society? To the Trojans, she's just crazy Cassandra having another fit. They pull her away, ignoring her pleas, her perfect vision of their doom dismissed as madness. They had their warnings, from both logic and prophecy, and they rejected them both. The path to destruction was now wide open. With the horrific death of Laocoon sealing the deal, and poor Cassandra's warnings dismissed as the usual ramblings, the debate is officially over. The horse is not a threat, it's a blessing. It's their reward for a decade of suffering, and now, they have to get it inside. There's just one small problem. It's absolutely enormous. Remember how Odysseus's plan involved making it too big to fit through the gates? That part of the trick worked a little too well. The main gate of Troy, a legendary piece of architecture that has held back the entire Greek army for 10 years, is simply too small for their new prize. So, what do? In a moment of supreme, tragic irony, the Trojans decide to do what the Greeks never could. They are going to break down their own wall. With cheers and songs, they take crowbars and hammers to a section of the very battlements that had kept them safe. It's a powerful symbol, isn't it? The physical barrier is destroyed not by the enemy, but by the citizens themselves. Blinded by what they believe to be victory, they are literally and figuratively tearing down their own defenses. It is like getting a new giant sofa and deciding the best way to get it in the living room is to knock out the front wall of your house. Once the breach is wide enough, the real work begins. Ropes thick as a man's arm are looped around the horse's neck and legs. The whole city, it seems, puts their back into it. They place the horse on rollers, and with a great collective heave, they begin to drag it into their city. This isn't a somber affair. It's a parade. It's their victory lap. People are singing paeans of triumph to the gods. Children run alongside the great beast, tossing flowers onto its wooden back. They hang garlands of wool around its neck. A mainstream fact often highlighted is how the entire city participated in this act, making everyone complicit in the final tragedy. The sound of the horse's rollers groaning over the ground is lost beneath the sheer volume of their joy. As evening falls, the horse stands in the heart of the city, right near the citadel, and the party starts. Troy explodes in a citywide festival, the kind of cathartic release you can only have after 10 years of siege warfare. Wine that had been saved for a special occasion is brought out and flows like water. They light bonfires, they dance in the streets, they sing songs, mocking the Greeks who they believe are now halfway home. Here's a little historical tidbit for you. The region of Troy was known for its viticulture, so you can imagine the vintage they were breaking out was probably top-shelf stuff saved for the day they knew they'd won. Scholars still debate whether this celebration was a spontaneous eruption of joy or a more formalized religious festival, a way of officially dedicating the horse offering to Athena. Either way, the result is the same. The sounds of their revelry echo into the night, drowning out the last, faint echoes of Cassandra's frantic warnings from earlier. As the hours wear on, the city slowly falls quiet, street by street, house by house. As its people, exhausted and drunk on wine and relief, stumble off to bed, they fall into the deepest, most peaceful sleep they've had in a decade, entirely unaware that their city has become its own tomb, with the instrument of its destruction standing silent and watchful in its center. Now, let's leave the drunken, sleeping Trojans to their dreams of peace, and go somewhere else. Let's go inside the horse. The party outside. For the men crammed within the suffocating darkness of the beast's belly, it was pure, unadulterated torture. Imagine being trapped in a wooden box, a sauna heated by the breath and body heat of 30 or 40 of the most dangerous men in the world. The air is thick with the smell of sweat, fear, and the pine resin used to seal the planks. You can't see a thing. The only reality is the hardwood beneath you and the bodies of your comrades pressed in on all sides. Every sound from the outside world is magnified and distorted. First, there was the terrifying thud of Glaucon's spear, a sound that must have made every man's heart stop, a moment of shared, silent panic. We mentioned that earlier, but can you imagine being on the receiving end, just waiting for the wood to splinter open? Then came the scraping, lurching, and groaning as their wooden prison was dragged through the city. They were powerless, tossed about like dice in a cup, their mission and their lives completely in the hands of the enemy. Then, the worst part, the celebration. For hours, they had to listen to the joyous songs of the people they were about to slaughter. They could hear the laughter and the music, a constant reminder of the horrific violence that was to come. At one point, the ultimate test came. According to one of the most chilling parts of the story, Helen herself, the face that launched 1,000 ships, approached the horse. Perhaps she was suspicious, or perhaps just cruel. She circled the wooden beast, and in a terrifying display of mimicry, she began calling out the names of the Greek heroes inside, perfectly imitating the voices of their wives back home. One by one, she called to them, her voice a phantom of their deepest longings. Inside the horse, a soldier named Anticlus was about to cry out in response, completely undone by the sound of his wife's voice. Before he could make a sound and doom them all, Odysseus, ever the, clamped his hand over the man's mouth and held it there with brutal force until the danger passed, nearly suffocating him to ensure their silence. That's the kind of ruthless focus it took. This story is a fantastically obscure and dramatic tidbit about the psychological warfare at play. The men inside were a who's who of the remaining Greek heroes: Odysseus, the mastermind; Menelaus, Helen's husband, waiting patiently for his revenge; and Neoptolemus, Achilles' ferocious young son, eager to prove he was a worthy successor to his father's legacy. Scholars still debate the sheer physical and psychological fortitude required to pull this off. How could so many warriors, many of them rivals, remain cramped in total darkness and silence for so many hours without a single one breaking? It speaks to a level of discipline that is almost superhuman. Finally, as the sounds of the party faded into drunken snores, a new sound began, a deep, heavy silence that meant the city was finally asleep. The waiting was the worst part, just sitting there in the dark, muscles cramping, listening to the pounding of your own heart, waiting for the signal. Could you have handled that pressure? Let us know in the comments if you would have been an Odysseus or an Anticlus in that moment. Hours pass in the belly of the horse. The suffocating darkness we just talked about has become a strange, tense comfort. But now, it's time. Outside, a signal. Not a loud one, maybe a prearranged bird call, or the scratching sound of a specific rhythm on the outer hull. It's from Sinon, the one Greek they left behind. His job was to be the ultimate actor, to weep and spin a tale of being a deserter chosen for sacrifice, a story so convincing it would sell the entire Trojan horse lie. He played his part perfectly, and now he plays his final role. He unbolts the hidden latch from the outside. With a soft groan of wood on wood, a panel on the horse's side swings open, and a rectangle of cool, moonlit night air slices into the hot darkness. It must have felt like the first breath of life. One by one, like specters emerging from a tomb, the Greek heroes descend. They drop silently to the ground using a rope ladder, their movements fluid and practiced. There's no triumphant shout, no battle cry. Imagine the sheer relief of finally being out of that cramped wooden prison, of being able to stretch your limbs and breathe fresh air, even if it is laced with the smell of stale wine and the smoke from the dying festival bonfires. The city is a ghost town. The streets are littered with discarded wine cups and wilted flower garlands, evidence of the massive party we saw earlier. And everywhere, there are not dead bodies, not yet, but the sleeping forms of Trojans, passed out in doorways and gardens, drunk on victory. They are, without a doubt, the worst security guards in ancient history. Odysseus gives a series of sharp, silent hand signals. The mission is clear. They split into small, deadly teams. The main objective: get those city gates open. It's like something out of a horrific ninja movie. They glide through the shadows, bronze blades glinting in the moonlight. The few sentries who are actually at their posts are dispatched with brutal efficiency. A hand clamped over a mouth, a muffled gasp, a swift, silent cut. There's no fight, no alarm. These guards, likely drunk and drowsy themselves, never knew what hit them. Here is a key bit of the story that often gets overlooked. Sinon doesn't just open the horse. He's also the one who lights the real signal. While the heroes head for the gates, he scrambles to the highest point of the Trojan citadel and lights a blazing fire that can be seen 4 miles out at sea. This is the signal the Greek fleet, hiding just out of sight behind the island of Tenedos, has been waiting for. The men who had only pretended to sail for home now turn their ships around and row with all their might back towards the shores of Troy. Back in the city, Odysseus and Menelaus reach the main gates. They overpower the handful of guards there and begin to heave at the massive wooden bar they watched the Trojans put in place with such celebration just hours before. Scholars still debate the exact nature of the signal system. Was it one fire, a series of fires, or did the opening of the gates themselves serve as the signal? Whatever the method, the effect was the same. With a deep, groaning creak that echoes through the sleeping city, the gates of Troy swing open for the second time that day. This time, however, they open to welcome an army of vengeful ghosts emerging from the sea, their swords thirsty for a city that has just invited them in. What do you think is the more vital role? The spy who sells the lie, or the hero who wields the sword? With the gates thrown wide open, the Greek army pours into the city. This isn't the tired, demoralized force that had been camped on the beach. This is an army running on 10 years of pent-up rage, grief, and a thirst for vengeance. The silence of the city is shattered, not by a single alarm bell, but by 1,000 screams at once. Torches are thrown into houses, and the dry, ancient wood of Troy, the city that had stood for generations, catches fire with terrifying speed. The night of fire and blood has begun. Imagine waking from a deep, wine-soaked sleep, not to the gentle light of dawn, but to the smell of smoke, the roar of flames, and the sounds of your neighbors being slaughtered in the street. Confusion reigns. Men stumble out of their homes, still half-dressed and unarmed, trying to understand what's happening. Is it a riot? A drunken brawl that got out of hand? The truth dawns on them in horrifying flashes of bronze armor and cold, merciless Greek faces. The horse, it was all a lie. That thought, that final, soul-crushing realization, was probably the last thing that went through many of their minds. The sack of Troy is infamous for its brutality. This isn't a battle, it's a massacre. The Greeks, having lost so many of their own, remember Achilles' Ajax, and countless others, are in no mood for honor or mercy. They kill everyone they find. Men, women, and children. The sacred rules of warfare, which normally protect heralds and forbid desecrating temples, are thrown into the fire along with everything else. Priests are cut down at their own altars. Women and children who seek sanctuary in the temples of the gods are dragged out and killed or taken as slaves. The mainstream mythological fact here is the sheer, unrestrained cruelty of the sack, and detailed that ancient writers themselves used as a cautionary tale about the horrors of war. The city turns into a hell. The narrow streets become death traps, slick with blood. The beautiful architecture that had been a source of Trojan pride is now just fuel for the inferno. The roars of the dying are mixed with the triumphant shouts of the Greeks and the crackle of the all-consuming fire. The heroes from inside the horse are at the forefront of the slaughter. Neoptolemus, Achilles' son, is a whirlwind of destruction, proving his bloody parentage beyond any doubt. Odysseus is in his element, a cunning and ruthless commander orchestrating the chaos, and Menelaus is single-mindedly carving a path toward the palace, looking for just two people, Paris, the man who stole his wife, and Helen herself. Here's a more obscure tidbit from some alternate traditions. It's said that some Trojans, in their desperation, put on the discarded armor of the Greeks they managed to kill. For a short time, this created even more chaos, as Greeks began accidentally attacking their own comrades in the dark, smoky streets. It was a brief, futile, but clever act of resistance in a city that was already doomed. Scholars still debate whether the scale of the destruction described in the myths is historically accurate, but the archaeological layers of Troy do show repeated evidence of violent destruction by fire around the time. The Trojan War is thought to have taken place. The message is clear. The celebration from a few hours ago feels like a distant memory from another lifetime. The night is long, and for the people of Troy, there will be no dawn. Let me know in the comments if you think the Greeks' brutality was justified after a 10-year war, or if it was an unforgivable war crime. Amidst the city-wide inferno, all the private dramas of the past 10 years come to a head. While the common soldiers loot and burn, the leaders are settling old scores. The central and most tragic of these final confrontations takes place in the royal palace, at the very heart of the burning city. King Priam, the ruler of Troy, is no longer the proud monarch who presided over a thriving city. He is an old man, frail and heartbroken, witnessing the complete and utter annihilation of everything he has ever known and loved. He sees his sons cut down one by one in the palace courtyard. He has already lost his greatest son, Hector, years ago at the hands of Achilles. Now, he watches the rest of his lineage be erased in a single night. His first instinct, even in his old age, is to fight. He calls for his armor and a sword, a pathetic and heroic final gesture. He's like the captain who is determined to go down with his ship. His wife, Queen Hecuba, pleads with him. She knows it's hopeless. She pulls him toward the sacred altar of Zeus that stands in the center of their palace courtyard. Clinging to the idea that even the savage Greeks wouldn't dare commit murder on holy ground, they huddle there with their daughters, a small island of royalty in a sea of flames. But there is no sanctuary left in Troy. A figure emerges from the smoke, his armor splattered with blood. It's Neop. We mentioned him before, but this is his defining moment. He has just killed one of Priam's youngest sons, Polites, right in front of him. Polites had been wounded and was trying to crawl to his father's feet for safety. But Neoptolemus ran him through without a moment's hesitation. Priam, filled with a father's rage, finds his voice. He taunts Neop. He reminds him that even the great Achilles showed respect for his enemies, that Achilles had given him back the body of his son Hector. It's a powerful callback to one of the most moving moments in the entire Trojan War saga. Neoptolemus is unmoved. His response is cold and chilling. Then you can go and deliver a message to my father in the underworld, he sneers. He grabs the old king by his white hair, dragging him away from the altar-pointed act of desecration. He is a Lysanan, and particularly grim detail from some accounts. Neoptolemus doesn't just kill Priam, he allegedly drags him all the way to the tomb of his father, Achilles, which was outside the city walls, and sacrifices him there as a direct offering to his father's spirit. Scholars still debate the character of Neoptolemus. Was he just a brutal, bloodthirsty or was he a young man so traumatized by his father's death that he was consumed by a need for vengeance that erased all morality? Either way, he murders the king without mercy. The death of Priam at the altar is the ultimate symbol of Troy's fall. It's not just the walls that are broken. The gods have abandoned them, their king is dead, and their entire social and religious order has been extinguished in a single, brutal act. The reign of Troy is officially over. Not every hero in Troy is meeting a grisly end. While the city burns and men like Priam face their doom, another great Trojan warrior, Aeneas, is fighting with the desperate courage of a man defending his home. He is a powerhouse, a prince of a different royal line, and a fighter second only to the late, great Hector. He's rallying the last pockets of Trojan resistance, ready to go down swinging and die a glorious death for a city that is already a corpse. He is fully prepared to become another casualty of the night, another ghost to haunt the ruins. But the universe, or more specifically, his mother, has other plans. Just as Aeneas is about to charge into a fight he cannot possibly win, a brilliant light envelops him, and the cacophony of slaughter fades to a hum. Standing before him is his mother, the goddess Venus herself, or the Greek Aphrodite. This is a major perk of being a demigod, a literal divine intervention when things get really bad. She's not there to offer comforting words. She's there to give him a reality check. She grabs his arm and tells him to stop. She asks him why he's so consumed with rage when he has a family, an elderly father, a wife, and a young son to think about. He is thinking like a soldier, but she needs him to think like a survivor. To really drive the point home, Venus performs a bit of divine magic. She wipes the mortal mist from his eyes, allowing him to see what's really happening. And what he sees freezes him to the core. He sees not just the Greek army, but the gods themselves, dismantling his city. He sees Poseidon, god of the sea, striking the foundations of the walls with his massive trident. He sees Juno, queen of the gods, and a bitter enemy of Troy, leading the charge at the gates. And he sees Athena, the supposed benefactor of the horse, with her terrifying Gorgon shield, personally directing the destruction. It's a divine demolition crew. This is the moment Aeneas understands. This isn't a war anymore, it's an execution. Fighting back is as pointless as trying to fight an earthquake. His choice is suddenly, brutally clear. Die here for pride, or live for a purpose. His mother commands him, "Your destiny is not to die with Troy, but to ensure that Troy does not die with you." He has to escape and carry the spirit and legacy of his people to a new land. So, Aeneas runs. He fights his way not towards the Greeks, but through them, back to his own home. There, he finds his family, his frail, elderly father, Anchises, his young son, Ascanius, and his wife Creüsa. Here's where a truly tragic and often overlooked part of the story happens. At first, Anchises refuses to leave, wanting to die in his homeland. It takes a divine Amena harmless flame that flickers over their sons' head to convince him. Aeneas hoists his father onto his shoulders, tells his son to hold his hand, and instructs his wife to follow close behind. They join the stream of refugees trying to flee the burning city. But in the chaos, in the smoke and the screaming crowds, Creüsa falls behind and is lost. Aeneas only realizes she's gone when they reach the designated meeting spot outside the city. Scholars still debate the narrative purpose of Creüsa's death. Was it a tragic but necessary plot point to free Aeneas for his future encounters and nation-building duties? Or was it simply a stark illustration of the personal cost of his epic destiny? He has saved his past and his future, but in doing so, he has lost his present. His epic journey has begun, but it starts with a profound personal tragedy. What's the one thing you'd risk running back into a fire for? Panic claws at Aeneas. He just made the impossible choice to flee, to abandon his city for the sake of his family, only to lose his wife in the chaos. His first instinct is pure, unthinking love. He hands his father and son over to his men for safekeeping and, against all reason, plunges back into the burning city. He retraces their frantic steps, screaming her name, Creüsa, into the fiery night. He runs through streets that are now completely controlled by the enemy, risking the destiny his mother Venus just personally delivered to him. He even makes it back to their own home, now a smoldering, empty shell. But she's gone. Just as he is about to be completely overcome by despair, a figure shimmers into view. But it's not her. It's her ghost, taller and more serene than she ever was in life. She tells him not to weep, that what has happened was the will of the gods. She explains that she was not fated to leave Troy with him. Her destiny was to remain with her homeland. Then, she gives him his mission, a prophecy, to steel his resolve. She tells him he will have a long exile, that he will journey across the sea to a land in the west, Hesperia, where the Tiber River flows. There, she says, a new kingdom and a new queen await him. It's the ultimate, it's not you, it's destiny breakup line, delivered from the great beyond. He tries to embrace her 3 times, but 3 times she dissolves in his arms like smoke. Heartbroken but resolute, Aeneas finally accepts his fate. He leaves his wife's ghost, and the ghost of his city behind, and returns to the meeting point, and what he finds there takes his breath away. It's not just his small group. A huge crowd of survivors has gathered, a cross-section of Trojan societymen, and children who managed to escape the slaughter. They are ragged, terrified, and leaderless, and they are all looking at him. In that moment, he transforms from a prince of a fallen city into the leader of a new nation. One of the most famous and enduring images from this entire saga is Aeneas hoisting his father, Anchises. This is a powerful, mainstream symbol. He is literally carrying his past, his heritage, and all its traditions with him. He takes his son, Ascanius, by the hand, representing the future and the hope he is leading toward a new life. But here's a crucial, often overlooked tidbit. Anchises himself is carrying something, the sacred household gods of Troy. These small statues represented the very soul and continuation of their people. So Aeneas isn't just saving his family. He's saving the spiritual essence of his civilization. He is a living bridge, carrying the past on his back, holding the future by the hand, and safeguarding the divine spirit of his people. With the fires of Troy painting the dawn sky red behind them, Aeneas leads his people into the wilderness, towards the sea. Their journey will be long and arduous, plagued by monsters, angry gods, and temptations. But this is the first step. Scholars still debate whether the detailed prophecy from Creusa's ghost was Virgil's later Roman invention to neatly tie the fall of Troy to the rise of Rome. But its effect is undeniable. It transforms a refugee's desperate flight into a divinely ordained mission. From the ashes of Troy, the seed of what will one day become the Roman Empire is planted, beginning its long, uncertain journey to a new home. And so, the fires of Troy begin to fade, not just from the plains of Anatolia, but from our story. The screams quiet down, replaced by the gentle lapping of waves on a distant shore. Aeneas and his followers are just specks on the horizon now, a fragile promise of a future they can't yet imagine. The great, epic violence gives way to a quiet, human weariness. The gods recede back into the heavens, their bloody work complete. All that's left are the smoking ruins, a testament to the terrible cost of pride and a reminder that even the greatest cities can fall.